He's such a boring guy, seriously. I mean, he's incredibly dull, and being around him just drags me down too. Having kids is out of the question. I get hives from stress just by being touched. Hiding in the closet, John, overheard my wife's outrageous complaints, trembling with shock and sadness. The reason I was hiding there was that I had finished work unusually early that day and decided to surprise her by hiding in the closet. I had planned to startle my wife when she got home, but I was the one who ended up being surprised. When my wife got home from work, she began talking to someone on her phone without noticing I was there. And then she started bad-mouthing me, using every filthy word she could think of. Unable to endure her tirade any longer, I quietly emerged from the closet. My name is John. I work in sales at a major food manufacturer. I met my wife, Emily, at a college mixer, and after falling for her at first sight, my persistent efforts led to our marriage. Emily is a magazine model affiliated with a modeling agency. With her charming looks and sociable, cheerful personality, she was the wife I was proud of. We had a grand wedding and chose the popular Hawaii for our honeymoon. Under the clear blue sky, we relaxed at the beach resort and then indulged in shopping at the world-famous brand stores. However, the reality of drifting apart awaited us when we returned from our honeymoon. Working for a major food company, I had a decent salary, but late nights were common, and I often traveled for work. As a result, I was hardly home on weekdays, despite being newlyweds. Emily, due to her job, left home earlier than me and returned at irregular hours. Gradually, we started having dinner separately and couldn't even share breakfast together. Then one day, returning from a business trip, I found that the double bed in our bedroom had been replaced with 2 single beds. Shocked, I confronted Emily. What is all this? We spent so much time choosing that double bed when we got married, didn't we? But her response was smooth and nonchalant. We wake up and go to bed at different times, and it's hard to rest well in one bed, right? So I traded it in for 2 singles. She explained it all smoothly, as if it was no big deal. But I just couldn't shake the feeling that there was another reason, and I couldn't accept her explanation. Because 6 months into our marriage, Emily had started refusing me, even when I asked. Even when we shared a bed, she would stiffen up to avoid any contact, curling up at the edge. Had I done something to upset her? I reviewed my actions in everyday life, but couldn't pinpoint any incident that could have caused such a rift. Gradually, dark suspicions grew in me, wondering if Emily had someone else. Once the suspicion of infidelity entered my mind, it was hard to shake off. During this time, I left for a week-long business trip. Leaving home felt unsettling, but is just part of being a salaried employee. As she saw me off, Emily seemed unusually kind. It felt as if she was happy about my absence. With a dry smile, I set off for Nebraska, a city covered in snow, looking for a mental escape. When I finally arrived after taking the flight, I found myself in a silver world where everything was covered in snow. The view, like a world of silver, seemed to cleanse my troubled mind. I continued with a new product campaign at various supermarkets, with only one day left. However, the last meeting was abruptly canceled due to a family emergency for the president of the supermarket chain. The company told me to head straight home after returning to New York, considering my fatigue from the long trip. I was secretly thrilled at the unexpected half-day off and reached for my phone to tell Emily. But then, I hesitated and put the phone down. What was Emily doing when I wasn't around? A mix of curiosity and suspicion churned inside me. So, I returned home early for a change, confirmed Emily wasn't there, and hid in the closet. And that's when I heard those terrible words. When I suddenly appeared from the closet, even though I wasn't supposed to be there on a business trip, Emily was so surprised that she dropped her phone on the floor. Well, I guess so. She said so many bad things about me. I stared at my wife with cold eyes as she reacted like something out of a cartoon. When I saw my wife for the first time in a week, she was still beautiful, wearing a suit with good taste. I should have thought that she was a waste of a woman for me. Emily's true feelings, which I secretly listened to, were surprisingly vulgar and childish. I felt my love for my wife suddenly disappear. The person in question didn't even pick up the dropped cell phone. That's not true. There was a reason for what we were talking about earlier. As if clinging to me, she frantically started making incoherent excuses. Her appearance was not her usual confident self. I shook off Emily's hand and said, "Sorry, being with me must be depressing, right? I'll leave as you wish. I need to clear my head." With that, I packed the bare essentials and left our home. Emily was sobbing, but I didn't feel like comforting her, as it was her own doing. Exhausted from a business trip and with my feelings in tatters, I somehow managed to reach a cheap inn. I took a shower there and shut myself in the room. Unable to sleep, despite being tired, I lay there looking at the ceiling, reflecting on my marriage with Emily. It had already been 2 years since we got married. Just 6 months into our marriage, our bedroom life became non-existent. Whenever I tried, Emily would just refuse. I tried watching love stories together and making an effort to be more affectionate, but it had no effect. Emily kept rejecting me. Initially, I felt sad being rejected, but Emily had always been indifferent, and I was too busy with work to worry about our lack of intimacy. There were other couples around us who also had no intimacy in their marriage, so I thought it was normal and didn't think much about it. No, I was too ashamed to admit my own rejection and chose not to think about it. It might be time for us to seriously discuss our future as a couple. To decide if there's still a reason for us to stay together. The next early morning, I checked out of the inn and stepped outside. The nightmare from the day before was still on my mind, and I hardly slept. I warmed my numb hands with my breath as I turned the key to my apartment. The apartment was deserted and eerily quiet. I thought for sure that Emily was out, so I opened the door to go get some coffee from the kitchen to have in the living room. Wasn't Emily crouched down in the kitchen, swollen and exhausted from crying? She must have cried all night. "John, I'm truly sorry about yesterday. Please listen to my story." As she said this, collapsing in tears, she seemed to be deeply regretting her harsh words. If I were still head over heels for Emily as I once was, I might have forgiven her immediately. But looking at Emily's tear-streaked face again, she seemed like a complete stranger to me. In that moment, I realized I no longer trusted Emily and felt the pain of knowing we couldn't go back to how we were. I'm going to the office right after having some coffee. While hurriedly making coffee and rummaging through the fridge, I retreated to my study without saying a word to Emily. For the following week, we continued living like strangers in the same house, and I managed my work while consulting about our future with various people. However, the only response I got was, "You're married, and it's not like your partner cheated on you, so you should forgive her." True, there was no evidence of Emily's infidelity, and she was taking good care of the home. But my decision remained unshaken. If we were to continue living together, rejected by Emily, there was no point in staying married. It wasn't just about physical intimacy, it was also about my earnest desire to have children someday. I quietly placed the divorce papers I had filled out on the living room table and went to bed without waiting for her return. That night, I suddenly awoke to a soft sensation on my leg. Emily should have been sleeping on the living room sofa. Reconsidering, I closed my eyes again, and this time, slender arms wrapped around my waist. The warm touch jolted me awake. It must have been Emily, who had slipped into the bed. When was the last time I felt the warmth of human skin? For a moment, I almost gave in to my desires as a man. At the same time, I remembered the harsh words Emily had hurled at me, like "You're such a boring man, and it's impossible for us to have children." Instantly, those feelings withered away. To Emily, whose arms were tightly wrapped around my waist, I said, "Can you let go of me? Please, don't disappoint me anymore." As I spoke, I roughly shook off her hands. After a while, Emily, still in bed, began to cry softly. "I'm truly sorry for hurting you. The truth is, ever since elementary school, I was harassed daily by a teacher, who was a man, which made me uncomfortable around men. That's why I couldn't respond to your advances." Hearing the shocking truth, I couldn't believe my ears. I want children too, and I've always wanted to be a mother, but I just couldn't bring myself to be intimate, and I've been blaming myself for it. So, to vent my frustration, I ended up making it seem like it was your fault to our friends. I wanted to apologize to you properly on our last day together as a couple. Seeing Emily sincerely apologize, I was deeply moved. Despite being married for 2 years, it was the first time I had heard about Emily's sexual trauma. Now that I think about it, every time I tried to touch her, she seemed to tense up. I was angry at myself for not understanding my wife's suffering at all. They say a marriage is like a mirror, but Emily's disrespectful behavior towards me was a reflection of my own lack of compassion towards her. I was glad that I realized my mistake before we parted ways. As soon as I felt this, tears welled up in my eyes. It might be because this is probably our last night together. In bed, I gently held Emily's hand. Even for us, there were plenty of happy moments in our marriage. How about we share one pleasant memory each, in turn, as our last memory? When I suggested this, Emily, wiping her tears, nodded in agreement. Yeah, the 2 years we spent as husband and wife were fun, weren't they? They weren't wasted at all. We began to talk, bit by bit. How Emily's dad cried a lot at our wedding. How I lost my wallet and caused a big fuss on our honeymoon. How we fought over our completely opposite tastes when choosing furniture. How happy I felt when I came home late and saw the lights on in the house. One story after another, just between the two of us. That night, we lay in bed and talked about our memories all night long. In the end, the feeling that remained wasn't regret, but gratitude for the 2 years we had together. The next day, because I stayed up until dawn, I was completely sleep-deprived and rubbed my sleepy eyes as I headed to the living room. On the table were Emily's signed divorce papers, along with a note that said, "Be happy." Next to me, there was a breakfast box containing all my favorite foods. Looking around the room, all of Emily's belongings had vanished without a trace. It was as if our marriage had been a dream. I remembered Emily's lonely smile from the day before. Wishing for each other's happiness, I muttered to myself and slowly savored the last breakfast she made for me. Several years later, I'm visiting the local park. A small hand, like a maple leaf, is firmly holding mine, and I make sure not to let go. Having remarried another woman since then, I was blessed with the child I had always wanted. Raising a child is harder than I thought, but I'm living a fulfilled and happy life. There have been various experiences to get to this point, but they make me cherish my current life even more. Wishing for Emily's happiness, wherever she is. It's all your fault. Your troubles made our daughter sick. Bring her back to me. My father-in-law, Keith, had shouted angrily through the funeral home. The next moment, I felt a dull pain on my left cheek and lost my balance, falling to the floor. Keith had struck me on the cheek. "It's because you bankrupted the company. That's why Emily had to work so hard and got sick." He towered over me, continuing his yelling. Sitting on the floor, holding my painful cheek, I pondered. Maybe he was right. I became president of a small food processing company left by my father at age 30. But 10 years later, the company's performance rapidly worsened and eventually went bankrupt. At that time, the company had a huge debt. I immediately started a new job, but my earnings weren't enough to pay off the debts, so my wife, Emily, 8 years younger, also worked full-time to support our family while caring for our 3 children. We shared household and child care duties, but with young children, there was always much to do, from school drop-offs and pickups, to attending to them when sick, to preparing meals, cleaning, and doing laundry. Even at home, there was never a moment of rest. Raising 3 kids while working was extremely tough. And since I often had more overtime work, the burden of childcare and housework fell more on Emily. This life continued for about 8 years, until Emily collapsed from overwork 3 months ago. At the hospital, blood tests revealed abnormalities, and we were told, unfortunately, it's quite advanced, and there's nothing more we can do. When Dr. Johnson told me this, it felt like a cold shower had hit my heart. Blood drained from my face, and my legs went weak. I wished it was a dream, hoping desperately to wake up from it. Dr. Johnson, how much longer can Emily live? Perhaps 3 more months. 3 months, that's too short. I thought so. It wasn't enough time. I wanted more time with Emily. She was only 40 years old. We still had so many things to do together, so many places to go with the family. I couldn't hold back my tears. Our children were at a sensitive age, the eldest 14 and the youngest 10. I wondered how much they would grieve without their mother. I struggled with whether to inform them and Emily about her life expectancy. But, wanting her to live her remaining life without regrets and to prepare the children gradually for the shock, I decided to disclose it. Me, only 3 months to live. You're kidding, right? Tell me it's a lie. Initially, Emily laughed it off in disbelief, but when she realized it was true, her expression turned complex. Who jokes about such things? Don't worry, I'm sure I'll get better soon. She struggled to accept the reality, remaining brave without tears. Yes, I believe that too, but as things stand, I think we should tell the children about the prognosis. When I shared my thoughts, she contemplated for a while before agreeing. Yes, they need to be prepared. That was the first time Emily showed her tears. She must have felt helpless, imagining the children's grief. Michael, please, take good care of our children. My wife clung to my chest, sobbing. How sad it must have been for her, knowing she wouldn't see our beloved children grow up. From then on, I juggled work and visits to Emily's hospital to provide for our 3 children. I wished I could quit my job to spend every minute with her, but, drowning in debt, it was an impossible dream. Emily must have felt so lonely. I had caused her so much trouble, failed to notice her illness until it was too late, and couldn't even be by her side in her final moments. What a failure of a husband I am. It's no wonder Keith hit me. He raised Emily alone and never wanted her to suffer. As I hung my head in these thoughts, an incident occurred. I don't want to see your face. Do you realize how much my daughter suffered because of you? This isn't a joke. Keith, consumed by anger, grabbed a cup and threw cold water at me. Father, please stop, a firm voice echoed through the funeral home. It was Emily's younger sister, Sarah, 2 years younger than her. She rushed in, standing between us. How can you do this? Emily's passing isn't Michael's fault. Don't take out your grief on him. Sarah. Keith looked at her, his expression complex. But Sarah, he bankrupted his company, drowned in debt, and made Emily suffer. Her life was miserable because of him. He argued back. But Sarah responded strongly. That's not true. Don't assume Emily was unhappy. She was happy with Michael. She shouted, pulling out her phone from her purse. Read this. It shows how happy she was. She operated her phone and handed it to him. What's this? It's Emily's social media. She posted her thoughts there every day. Keith stared at the screen, his hands trembling. Tears fell from his eyes. "Emily," he whispered and wiped his eyes. What was written there? Curious, I timidly asked. "May I see it too?" Then Keith stood next to me, showing me the phone screen. It read as follows. "Tonight, it took an hour and a half to put the kids to bed, but lying with them is pure bliss, especially in winter. Cuddling up to their warm bodies, I feel a deep warmth inside. Their sleeping faces are angelic, so adorable, and just looking at them is healing. Juggling work and parenting 3 kids is tough, but my children are adorable, and I find joy in my job every day. Staying connected to society, even as a mother, is something I'm grateful for. I often hear my stay-at-home mom friends talk about feeling lonely or wanting an escape from parenting. I'm fortunate to find a balance between work and parenting. I'm so grateful for my husband leading the way in housework and parenting. Without him, I wouldn't have this happiness. The debt repayment is tough, but we're managing it together, and we should be able to afford our children's future education. Our eldest son stopped attending school. He couldn't make friends and was scared of talking to people. Michael took a day off to chalk to the school. There's a support room for students who struggle in the classroom. For now, he'll attend there. He finds it easier to talk to Michael, maybe because they're both male. Michael listened so kindly and carefully. Our son felt reassured. I'm thankful for Michael. He's truly reliable. Every day is busy but fulfilling and fun. Just seeing my family's faces makes my heart feel lively. I love my family. No matter how late Michael comes home from work, he always listens to me intently. Just talking to him relieves my mood. Seeing his smile heals my work stress. It's like magic. Today, I was told I have 3 months to live. At first, it felt unreal, like it wasn't about me. But thinking about leaving my family brought uncontrollable tears. I don't want to be apart from them. I want to be with Michael and the kids much longer, but that is not possible. Happy memories flooded my mind like a movie. Loved by Michael and the kids, I believe my life was truly happy. To Michael, thank you for meeting me and marrying me. Because of you, I had a happy life. I'm grateful. I wish we could have been together longer, but please forgive me for leaving you and the kids first. I'll always wish for your happiness. If you find a wonderful woman, don't hesitate to remarry, but please don't forget about me. Remember our first date by the sea, the words you said during the proposal, how you were the first to cry at our wedding, our honeymoon in France, the times we took the kids to the zoo, our picnics in the park, and making cakes together on birthdays. All these memories are precious to me. I won't forget them, so please, don't you forget either. Reading this, I couldn't hold back and covered my face with my hands, crying. After that were messages to each of our children and Emily's parents and sister. Emily asked me to let family read this after she passed. Sarah said, I was going to show it after the funeral, when everyone had calmed down, but you see, Father, Emily wasn't unhappy. She was happy with Michael, right? Yes, that's true. Keith nodded, wiping away tears. Sorry, Michael, for hitting you. I truly regret it. Can you forgive me? He apologized to me. It's okay, Father. I understand your grief. Losing someone dear can be unbearable. I thought I was to blame for Emily's death. But Emily wouldn't have wanted that. She wanted me to be happy. I had to live looking forward, not back. Can you forgive me, after what I did? I'm so sorry. You're a kind person, Michael. That's why Emily was happy with you. Keith said, wiping his tear-soaked face. Though my cheek hurt from being hit, humans make mistakes. He was remorseful, so I had to forgive him. As Emily would have wanted. I knew he was a kind and gentle person, so I decided to forget the incident. I shook his hand firmly. Seeing this, Sarah also cried. Our 3 children, seated in the family section, hugged each other and wept. It would take time to heal from this grief. But for Emily's last wish, We had to be happy. I just wanted to be glad that Emily's life was happy. In the end, she passed away peacefully, holding my and our children's hands. She lay in the coffin, peaceful as she had been in her final moments. Though we were parting from her physical presence, she would surely watch over us from above. So I, too, will always remember her. I will protect the children with my life, as she would have wanted. Thank you for loving and supporting me. I silently told Emily's portrait. She seemed to smile back, responding to my words. A week after the funeral, our eldest son, who had been skipping school, started going again. I don't want to make Mom in heaven sad, so I'll try my best. I feel like I can do it if I think she's cheering for me. That's great, Tom. Do your best. Mom would be proud. Talk to me about anything, okay? Our children were slowly growing stronger, overcoming their mother's death. Emily would continue to watch over us from within our hearts. I'll work hard not to worry you. I promised myself, vowing to live positively for the kids and for Emily.